my name is Kathy Lynch. I'm the chair of the Westford Republican Town Committee and the host for the Second Opinion Show. Today we have a special guest, Dennis Galvin. He is he's on the Finance Committee in Westford, and he is here to talk about a topic that has interested a lot of people. It's the topic of stormwater. There's an article on the town meeting, which will be on October 28th in the Abbott School at 7 p.m. And we want to make sure that people are aware of this article and look at it from different angles. I really look forward to hearing your perspective on this. So I've compiled a number of questions to make sure we stay on track and get through this.
Ooh, thank you for having me.
Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks for having me.
Are there any options open to the town in regard to the EPA mandates on this stormwater? Can you explain a little bit about that for the viewers?
Sure. I think the story of the stormwater goes back to 1973 with the Clean Air Act. And at that time, the federal government assumed jurisdiction over all ponds, lakes, streams, and lakes throughout the United States. And since that time, they have promulgated certain regulations that govern this. One of the areas of that they regulate is the area of stormwater. Now, stormwater is not sewage or sewer or regular water. It's the water that basically comes down through precipitation onto the surface and then flows into these bodies of water. And
let me just say, that's why it gets the reputation or the name of rain tax, because it's about the rain coming down.
It's about your rain. It's rain coming down, and it goes into your water, and the EPA asserts jurisdiction over those bodies of water, and because of that, they promulgate regulations. And they have been working with the communities and states for a long period of time, but things began to change around, maybe 2013, 2014. And at that point in time, there was a discussion between the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, our state legislature, and the EPA over who was going to enforce updated stormwater mandates. And as a result of this, the state legislature backed away from it. They backed away from it, which allowed the EPA to assert direct jurisdiction over Massachusetts cities and towns, which is not a normal thing. It's very important to point that out. In fact, Massachusetts was only one of 4 states that allowed this. Now, the problem with it is that when the states retain jurisdiction, there's a lot more leeway and latitude as to how they can work with the communities to make the adjustments necessary to comply with the requirements. When the EPA does it, it's much more of a draconian approach. There's not a lot of leeway, and consequently, the Commonwealth of the EPA, the latest round of upgrades, which were passed in 2018, is requiring the Massachusetts town of Westford here to upgrade their stormwater protocols to the tune of about $1 million. That's a lot of money. It's a big imposition on the town, and the town is basically in a position where it has to deal with this imposition. Now, if it doesn't comply, what happens is the EPA can pull the permit, and if we refuse to comply, they can impose a fine on the town up to $500,000, probably a year, and they can also put us in an oversight mode where we have a receiver that actually directs and can control how this is going to go, and they impose the cost on us. So our options are essentially, we can fight it, which will be expensive legal venture, or we can comply with it. And I think the general consensus of the town right now is to comply with it. Over time, that might change. But some communities have decided to appeal this ruling. Westford's not one of them. But right now, the policy of the town is to comply with mandates imposed by the EPA.
Okay, at this time, that's the flavor of what people are thinking in the town, at least the leadership.
That's correct.
Okay. So what does the Board of Selectmen intend to do?
Well, the Board of Selectmen have developed a a program for funding these compliance. They have to raise this $1 million that I told you about. And what they have decided to do was, on their own volition, is to institute a fee on every property owner in this town. And that fee will be sort of prorated based upon the amount of impervious surface you have on your property, because the equation is if you have a lot more impervious surface, you're contributing a lot more stormwater runoff, so you should pay a higher fee. And there's about 3 categories of fees that they're going to impose. And this is I think, a controversial policy that they've embarked upon.
Well, now there's a stormwater line on the warrant. Are there any more lines on the warrant?
No. Well, the only article on the warrant that's a significant article is going to be Article 6, because the Board of Selectmen have concluded that because they're imposing a fee, they do not need to come to the town meeting to get authorization for that fee. They're going to directly impose it. And Article 6 is going to ask for the software to be able to help them manage this particular program that they want. And I think this is a controversial thing. They also want to create an enterprise fund, which is related to their fee imposition and nothing more. And both of these combined, I think, represent a challenge, if you will, to the sovereignty of the town meeting. I think there's a question here.
Yeah, so you have an issue with this.
Yes.
And where does the Finance Committee stand with this?
The Finance Committee in the last meeting voted 5-3 to support the Selectmen's decision to approve this funding on Article 6. I voted against it, and I voted against it because of the concerns that I have with the Selectmen's approach.
And how will you be voting? I guess we know how you're going to vote.
Yeah.
If the residents of Westford block the funding, what can we do to ensure that we can still comply with the EPA mandates?
Well, if we block the funding, what happens is we will we can. There are other ways that we can fund it. We can fund it through, first of all, an override, and second through the establishment of a municipal water infrastructure surtax, which, in contrast to what the fee system is that the selectmen are proposing, would give the town meeting the authority to set the rates, to approve any rate increases. As it stands now, with this fee program, the selectmen will establish the rates, and they will not be getting authorization from the town meeting. They will do it purely on their own volition, and that's a big issue. That's a big issue.
Well, what is the difference between the override tax and a surtax? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
The override tax would be a tax that would basically, on your property tax assessment, you would get an increased assessment. The water infrastructure would be somewhat similar to the CPA, where you pay a certain surtax on the property tax that you're already paying, but that money goes directly into a fund to support infrastructure for water and things like that, which would go directly to the compliance. Mm-hmm. With the override, what would happen is the money would simply go to the general fund, and it could literally be spent by any group, anybody that gets their hands on it. So I would favor an infrastructure surtax. That would be my preference if, in fact, we were having an issue to fund this particular proposal.
I see. Yeah, that seems to make sense, because then you know the money's going to exactly where they say. You know.
Yeah.
So I didn't attend a informational meeting at the senior center about the stormwater, and they said something about a deferment article for the senior citizens. Can you tell me more about that? Yes,
Article 7, which is the one following it, will be an article that will defer the fees for, I think, means-tested seniors until the point where they sell their house. So these will accumulate to the point where when they sell their house, they will have to pay, in order for the house sale to go through, they will have to square away and pay the fee assessment that the town is going to impose upon them. They don't have to pay it while they're living in the house, but when they sell the real estate, then they're going to have to pay for the cumulative amount of fee that they would have paid if they had been paying right along.
So either way, they're going to have to pay.
Yeah, no one gets out of this. That's the thing about it.
It's that they're going to see it later rather than now.
That's right.
Yet I could imagine that people would feel good that they're not having to pay that now. It might feel great, and they don't have to see that money that they have to pay. But it will end up.
They're going to pay it.
And the sale of a house, that's a stressful time. A lot of expenses included. So I can assume that you are going to vote against the deferment article. Am I right on that?
Yes, because okay. I don't agree with the premise of the Article 6 to begin with. I have no problem with a deferment under the surtax or any other thing. I mean, that would be my issue with this. Is not the fact that we're going to fund we need to fund the money. I have accepted, at least in this go around, the idea that we're going to have to fund this to keep the EPA off our back. I'm doing it grudgingly. But my concern is that there's a real issue of precedent that's being set here that I think for property owners in this town, I think they need to pay attention to this. And the precedent is that the Board of Selectmen is asserting that in this particular case, they're going to impose a fee, which is mandatory. And there's an issue about that. A mandatory fee on every property owner, and that this imposition or this impost on them will not go to town meeting for their approval. It'll be in the hands of the Board of Selectmen, which I view as an administrative tax, which I think violates the principle of taxation without representation. Now, the Board of Selectmen will tell you that there's no taxation of representation here. They are elected representatives, and they have decided to impose this tax. But I'm asking you to consider the fact that separation of powers also applies to town government, and that separation means that taxation without representation means that taxation always originates in the legislative branch. The town meeting is the legislative branch for this town, and the selectmen are originating this imposition, this tax, and as a result of that, we're being deprived of our right to be able to initiate that. And I think this separation needs to be observed because future things can lead to other impositions, which I think would really hurt the taxpayers here.
Well, a lot of people still don't go to town meeting. They still don't know that they have a voice in the legislature, that they can have a say, and they really should understand what's going on. So I'm really glad you're coming in here to just give us another point of view.
Sure.
Is there a danger that the EPA could increase the fees on us?
Yes, there is. Now, just to be explicit, this fee will be set for 3 years. The Board of Selectmen took a motion and passed that whatever the fee is now will be set for 3 years. But the EPA is a bureaucracy, so there is a process that they follow. But there is always the possibility that they could increase these fees, which means that the Board of Selectmen then would increase the fee on the property owners who are having to pay this particular fee, and the property owners would have no say about that. It's strictly going to be passed down to them, and that's a big concern. Okay.
What will happen to the money that is already allotted to this stormwater budget? We already have a certain amount. I think it's like $600,000. If I'm not, I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, it's a great question for town meeting. I hope somebody asked that. I believe what would happen is that the money that is currently apportioned for stormwater would come out of that budget, because now there's a dedicated revenue stream coming in from these fees, and I don't believe that they're going to propose a decrease in the property tax. So that money would go into the general fund to be distributed however the town leadership recommends, and the town departments in their ebb and flow for funds, whoever kind of wins that will get the spoils of that particular redistribution. But I think it's important to note that there are some legal issues involved with this, and if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about this a little bit.
We have some time for that. Yeah.
there is the idea, the Massachusetts State Constitution and the Supreme Court are very sensitive to the idea about imposition of fees. And there is a ruling called the Emerson Rule, which means that there are three particular tests that you apply. One of them is the fee voluntary? Number two, does it benefit solely the owners? Particularization. And three is, are the funds used specifically for the programs that they're designed for?
So hold on a second, because the second one sounded like particularization. So you have the voluntariness of the fee.
Yeah.
You have the particularization, that means it's going to one thing.
Yeah.
And then there's another one, right?
Yeah, and the particularization means it only benefits the people that are paying the fee.
Okay.
And then the last one is that the money that's gained goes directly to the service and nothing else. That's what the last principle is.
Oh, okay.
Now, this proposal, you will get an argument from town council claiming that this is consistent with the Emerson Rule, but I think this is an issue that town meeting is going to have to decide. It's strictly an issue that they'll have to decide.
Right.
Do you believe that the way that the Board of Selectmen are going about imposing this fee is voluntary? Can you say, I don't want this service, I want some other service, I don't want to pay for this service, I'll take care of this myself? Now, they're claiming that they will give credits for modifications, but the fact is they cannot give carte blanche, they cannot relieve everybody of the burden, because if they do, they won't have the money necessary to meet the mandates. So there's a certain portion of these assessments that there will be no leeway on. You're going to have to pay it. I see that as not as violating the voluntariness principle. And the other thing is, the focus of this is going to be not just on the property owners. The property owners are going to be providing a service that other people are going to be benefiting by. Those two considerations alone would lead one to believe that maybe this is a tax, not a fee, okay? And if it's a tax, then there's a specific way that you go about doing it, and that is by utilizing the process that the state law requires for increasing property taxes, either through the surtax or through an override.
The other thing I noticed about this is that nonprofits will be hit in a significant way, because they have big parking lots and big roofs in some of these buildings, like churches, for example. Mm-hmm. They're really going to get hit hard when they don't have a lot of money to begin with. They
will get hit hard. The selectmen have voted to defer the imposition on the nonprofits for a year to give them a chance to get the money up, and I think that you're right. Under taxation, there are exemptions for nonprofits. Churches, civic organizations, things like that, beneficial organizations, those will not apply in this case. Everybody's going to be hit. And some of these fees are going to be very significant. So I think one of the things, for example, St. Catherine's Church, for example, could be looking at as much as a $3,000 hit for a fee each year.
Okay. And what do you see as the underlying cause for this issue, and how do you think it could be rectified?
Well, I see underlying cause is the failure of the state legislature to assert its jurisdiction. And they did it, it would have cost the state $29 million, allegedly, according to an article by Commonwealth Magazine, $29 million to assert jurisdiction and to work through the DEP to make sure that there's compliance with the towns. So they can reassert jurisdiction any time. So it would be my hope that the state legislature would see the impact that this is going to have on the cities and towns and say, look, let's reassert jurisdiction, rather than, you know, it would be like almost like a local aid increase if they reasserted jurisdiction, because this is money that we can all keep in our pockets. But they haven't decided that they're going to do that. Up until that point, the only other thing that could happen would be a resistance effort, which would require the cities and towns to start banding together and saying, okay, we're gonna comply, but we're gonna comply at our rate and the way that we believe we can financially accommodate. And but that would require a lot of coordination, and I don't think that the state is ready for something like that yet. I don't see it.
Okay, and I would imagine that the Congress has a lot of say as well at the higher.
Well, whoever the director of the EPA, one of the reasons this happened was it didn't happen, but the EPA the EPA decided to upgrade these regulations in 2018, and the President administration deferred it to the states. Other than that, they would have gone directly, like they're doing to us now. But Massachusetts did not want to follow that. They wanted the EPA to directly conduct the mandates here and impose the mandates here directly. So I think that's a significant thing. But that's how it can be reversed. The legislature can reverse it.
Does this relate to the Green New Deal, or?
I'm not sure. I don't think it's specifically contained in the Green New Deal, but certainly there. I think some of the sentiment in the legislature that led to the decision not to assert jurisdiction was probably driven by a very heightened and very high commitment towards environmental protection at all cost.
So, since we have a little bit of time, we can talk about the fact that there's a lot of different mandates that could potentially come down. And yeah, we all want clean water. We all want certain services. But it's getting to the point where we're being taxed at higher and higher amounts. And the government's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Wouldn't you say that when the leadership is kind of dictating what you pay, then the people have less of a say, and you have less representation when the government is so big and they're mandating things? And isn't it true that the town meeting would be the place where the people have the voice and they can assert themselves more than being told what to do?
Oh, I agree with that 100%. And I think it's very important for the townspeople to understand that this may seem like a trivial issue for some people, but it could be the beginning of a trend. And I think it's very important for the town meeting to be able to assert its historic and traditional jurisdiction over the origin of taxation or any fee or any mandatory imposition of funding on property owners, because it's like everything else. If this goes by easy and people do not stand up to it and say, no, we don't want to do it this way. We want to have the oversight over how the rates are done. We want to have the oversight how this is put together. Then that'll send a signal to those who adopt a more centralized view that it's okay to keep pushing forward with other things like this. And before you know it, the taxpayer is going to have a lot of increase in costs. And they, in some cases, like this one, they won't really know where it's coming from. They're going, in order to be able to find out where the costs are, you're going to have to wait for your water bill or your water bill to come out to be able to see it. And people are going to say, well, where's this coming from? And you should be able to see it at town meeting. You should know when you go to town meeting, well, I approve this, now I can expect the bill. You don't want to have a situation where you don't know where that cost is coming from. And I think that this is an important issue, and I think it's one that, although it doesn't directly relate to the selectmen's decision because they're going to go along with it irregardless of what town meeting is going to do, it's a way for the town meeting to send a message to the Board of Selectmen that they don't want to see business conducted like this. If you withdraw that funding, then what happens is the Board of Selectmen are going to have to try to find some other way to do it. And maybe, just maybe, they'll understand that the townspeople don't really like to do it this way. They want to have a direct say in how they get taxed.
Well, either way you look at it, though, I mean, overrides, people don't like overrides. And when you think about it, this might be a way to kind of bypass an override because they don't want to come again to the people for an override.
Well, I think one of the members of the Board of Selectmen actually made that statement. She said that she did not want to. There was a statement made by the chair of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee that she did not want to have to come back to the people every time they wanted to increase the fee. Now, to me, that is a significant departure from past practice. All right, and I think it's something that every taxpayer in this town should be aware of. And maybe they want to go along with that. I think that's a very, very risky road to go down, to be quite frank with you. Certainly not good for anybody that's concerned about what their bottom line is in their own personal and home budget. All right, you want to have a say in what's going on.
Well, I think we really gave a good picture, of what's going on with the stormwater, and it's always good to give viewpoints from different sides, because if you don't know what the potential ramifications could be. So that's the beauty of a democracy. You're able to hear different points of view, and I think that was great that we did that today. Do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I would just say at the town meeting, I would strongly urge you to look at Article 6 and Article 7 very, very carefully. Know what it's about. It's not about just an expenditure of funds. It's about the selectmen embarking upon a departure from an old standing tradition of coming to the town meeting for approval to raise fees and taxes. And I'd urge you to vote no and send it back to the Board of Selectmen and let them know that you want to have the say in what your rates are going to be and when you're going to get taxed. And that's what I leave you with.
Well, thank you for your viewpoint. And to the listeners today, I thank you for being on the show. It's always good to get a second opinion, and I do encourage you to research this and just keep watching and learn more about what's going on within your town.